everyone, and welcome to Read This Now, the weekly webcast where Brad Gustafson and I share two books that we love and we think you should read. When, Brad?
Chop, chop, right now, right now.
I live for your responses to that every week. I just wait for that in anxious anticipation. How are you, my friend?
So do I. I'm doing so good. I had a book fall in my lap this week, and I just can't stop thinking about it. It's incredible. I wasn't expecting it. So I've been waiting like for this moment right here. It's just like next level. We need a second show called Read This right now. Something like that.
I love it. Well, don't leave us hanging. Tell me about it.
Okay. I kind of cut through all the pleasantries and stuff. Thankfully, we got to connect a little bit before the show. So, like I was thinking when I was in my master's program, that one of the instructors had this thing called star sprinkles, and these are all grown adult educators, but yet we all wanted to get star sprinkles from the professor, which sounds really weird. And now I use it with our elementary kiddos here, and don't give them out lightly, but when I do, it's a big deal. So this book, I'm going to try something never pulled off on the show before. I'm going to star sprinkle. Here we go.
Yes.
Here we go.
Yay!
This is it. I just want to take all the suspense out so we all know what I'm talking about. It's coming out May 18th, but I just need to talk about now and until then and after then. So Jen, Focused by Alyson Gerber is one of my all-time favorites. Like I would put it in the solid top 5, like all time, right? So that was a big deal. And I don't know how else to say this. I assumed this would be good, but I wasn't expecting to fall in love with it like Focused. And somehow, like whoa. So what's all the whoa? What's all the star sprinkling about? So there's a I'm gonna say middle school young woman named Sarah, and basketball is her life. She has 2 parents that love her dearly. Her mom has a difficult relationship with food, and we learn a little bit more about that over the course of the story. And to Sarah, that's kind of the lens. It impacts her lens, how she looks at the world and her relationship with food. But one of the things I love about this book is how it ebbs and flows in such a realistic manner, but yet at like a manner that's super accessible, I think, to elementary kiddos and for sure middle school and high school, on a really important topic of disordered eating and eating disorders. And it gets in the minds of Sarah to the point where I was kind of relating with her on different levels. Like I might think about other things and just struggle with other things. But you know how you question yourself and your view,
Sure.
or like even in middle school or even right now, like you walked by and if someone's laughing or talking and they stop talking, we all probably kind of think like what's going on and all this. But Alyson just artfully navigates the middle school world in such a real and authentic way. It took me back so authentically to some of those hard times, but and good time. Like this isn't just a downer book. It's inspiring. It's a story of perseverance and growth and friendship and learning and trying to figure out like good friends who aren't good in that moment, who could have done better, who come back around, and vice versa. Like all the things. Like I think if I had to pick one word, I couldn't pick one word, but authentic would be one of the things. And somehow she does it so. It's so simple, but yet profound. Like as I started reading this, like the first couple pages, it's just very accessible. And I'm thinking, gosh, our elementary kiddos, this is very readable. But then you start to worry, like, oh my gosh, is it going to have that power? And sure enough, somehow in just a few short pages, I was in and sold and in the world. And I feel like because of my passion and excitement, I probably just skimmed over a bunch of really important stuff. So the one last thing I'll say for right now, before I take a breath and listen to your genius, is one of the zillion things I like about this book, all the different relationships, but one of them is there's a coach in here who, because Sarah played basketball is such a big part of her life, that connection and how, I don't want to give too much away, but the coach becomes really pivotal in also helping Sarah get the help that she needs over the
Oh,
course of the book.
great.
And it's a lot more complex than that and nuanced, just like life
Hmm.
is so nuanced.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say, Alyson just hit a home run. And I think, sorry, it's hard when you have a book that you love so much. I love the title for me, Taking Up Space.
Hmm.
I haven't talked to Alyson about this, but like, I think it's talking about in a physical sense, like maybe not feeling like you're worth the space you're taking up, but
Yes.
also it was interesting to me. It's like what we give space to in our head, and that can be a
Yes.
battle. And sometimes it can take friends and counseling and reminders and affirmations and discipline and mantras and things to overcome that. But for me, that was kind of the play, not the play on words, but it was powerfully connected to that. So I'm
Wow.
just going to take a breath and try to soak in whatever you got for me now.
Well, Brad, I mean, per usual, we're on the same page in terms of our books this week without any pre-planning at all. Our
Mm-hmm.
3.5 viewers know we never plan this show, and yet remarkably, it feels like each week there's some kind of parallel journey that we're on. If I were going to go into my doctoral program, I know you have a doctorate, Dr. Gustafson. I do not, but if I were, I may have to do my dissertation on why our books seem to connect every single week. I think there's something there. But it's so interesting because as a fat person myself, I feel like the world reminds me all the time of how much space I take up. So that title is very like emotionally, it's like that title triggers some emotion for me. But I love the way that you connected it to the idea of allowing those messages to take up space in our heads and in our hearts too. That's such a powerful thing. And I'm anxious to read the book because I love also the way that you connected, or you mentioned the coach in there who was supportive of the character and what she's dealing with at home with her mom and herself, etc. That sounds really powerful, and it's related to the book that I read this week as well. Who is by it's by an author that, like you feel with Alyson Gerber, this is an author whose books I like anxiously anticipate. I swear to you, if Renee Watson just said she was going to publish her grocery list, I would pre-order 10 copies and clear the weekend to spend, like to read it, because I
Oh.
just love her books in the same way that you love Alyson Gerber's books and you have high expectations for them. Always with, at least for me, there's always this like little nugget of dread in the back of my mind that, oh, what if it doesn't live up to these expectations? And yet every single time it does. So for me this week, the book by Renee Watson is called Love is a Revolution. And oh, it sounds to me like there's lots of parallels between this book and the one that you read. But for my book talk, I wanted to kind of break down the different kinds of love that are in
Mm.
this book. Okay. So there's, for Nala, who's the main character, there's the love of family and friendship, which is a key part of this book. Nala doesn't live with her biological parents. She lives with her cousin Imani's family because things were a little too tough at home and Imani's family took her in. And for Nala, Imani isn't just her cousin. Imani is her best friend. Imani is her sister. And there's a deep and profound love between them and that whole family that's explored in the book. But that's not the only kind of love. There's also this love of culture and of community. Nala feels that in her bones and expresses it in ways that feel powerful to her, but that sometimes don't align with Imani and this group that Imani belongs to called Inspire Harlem, which is this group of young activists who get together to do all sorts of things to celebrate the community that they live in. And they invite, or at least Imani invites Nala to come along, but Nala doesn't always feel welcome there or understood. And sometimes she's reminded of the amount of space that she takes up in that place, both physically and in her opinions that don't always align with the groups, right? So there's this love of community and how that is expressed and how people come together around that that's in the book. But then, of course, there's romantic love, which we can kind of see on the cover as well, which Nala definitely wants to experience with this boy named Ty, who is a member of Inspire Harlem. But their relationship gets off to a really rocky start because on the day that they first meet, Nala tells what seems to be sort of some simple, innocent lies to Ty in order to impress him, to make him think that she's more like what she thinks he wants. And of course, that's like the beginning of what you think is like this screwball comedy where she's trying to constantly keep ahead of the lies, you know, because lies, even innocent ones, have a habit of snowballing, right? But what really becomes evident is that Nala is far less worried as the book progresses about Ty finding out the truth and more worried about why she feels the need to change herself and more worried about why she thinks her authentic self isn't worth loving, which brings you to really the overarching love that is the theme of this book, which is loving yourself for who you are and not feeling the need to change. And as I read this book, I'm telling you, Brad, it felt to me like, and I don't know Renee Watson, I don't want to speak to her, but speak for her, but as a reader, it felt like a love letter to specifically young Black girls, and maybe even more specifically, young fat Black girls who feel like the messages they receive from the media, from maybe even some members of their family and their community, from pop culture, that they should change themselves in order to fit a more palatable version of what beauty and strength and power are, and how Nala comes to reject that and to love herself in what is really a pretty radical and powerful way. So I just found this book so inspiring, so worthy of being in my consistent fan club, president of the Renee Watson fan club toolbox. And I'm also excited that it seems to relate to your book this week, because these are messages I think that a lot of kids need to hear. So the book is Love is a Revolution by Renee Watson, and I think you should read it right now.
Jen, hold that back up 1 sec if you wouldn't mind. I'm going to try something. We're going to do star sprinkles for your book too. I don't know what side of the screen there we go. That's how much I trust your recommendations, Jen.
I loved this book, and it sounds to me like you loved your book, and they sound both like important books for all sorts of readers. And so that's exciting to me.
So the more I fall in love with reading, the more like old cliches, you know, people say readers are leaders and reading matters. And like, I think I used to say that as a teacher and believe it, but the depth and conviction in those statements pales in comparison to what I'm thinking and feeling right now. So the reason that I preface this next statement with all that is, like, when we talk about reading, building empathy, like a book like this and what it sounds like your book is, that's another reason. Like, if you want to also just learn to be a better human being and grow as a person with personal growth, you read a book like this and you realize even that things you do and think and your nonverbals to your kids and people, like, it all matters, and it can impact them in ways that aren't even on your radar, that should be on your radar. So you're right, Jen, there seems to be a lot of interesting, like, connection between these stories based on what you said. I will definitely have to read what you shared. So, and
vice versa. And I'm going to add one more thing to your comment about empathy, and that is that, you know, my friend Chad C. Everett, who is a assistant principal in Mississippi, you know Chad. We've met him at some reading summits and other places. But he says, and I think about these words all the time. He says the end point of empathy is not feelings. The true end point of empathy has to be action. So therefore, it's not just enough to understand how somebody else feels if that understanding doesn't affect your behavior in some way, if you don't take action in some way. And books like the ones that we shared today, I think, are especially profound as these sort of empathy machines, because not only do they give you an insight into the experience of someone else, but they also provide you with models of how to do better. Because when the characters around them respond by giving support, by loving and accepting, by changing their own behavior so it's not harmful, then it provides us with a roadmap of how we can be better allies for people who need us. So that's
Yeah, and
awesome.
to that point, Jen, like as a dad of two daughters, I love the power and positive influence that this book could provide. But I also, for my son and the boys around the world, but also that I get to serve in our school, I want them to develop empathy, not the just ending at a feeling, but like Chad says, ending in changed action. Now that you
Yes.
know to choose your words so carefully. Like I think this book can do so many things in addition to just being a ridiculously good story. So,
Wow, what great books this week.
yeah, way to go.
Woo,
Proud to
I
know you.
love
And
it.
Jen, you would be on, like, I can't think of anyone's grocery list who I would want to read more than yours, because you are so inspiring and I just consider you a genius. And you know that, I've told you that before, but I feel like you would have some type of system I would learn from, whether it's color coding or I don't know what it would be, but I have no doubt it would be like,
I'm gonna have to up my grocery list game before I go there. But I appreciate that. So, Brad, if our 3.5 viewers would like to learn more about these books, watch this video again, or check out all the other books we've recommended over the years, where can they go?
yeah, we have an archive of lots of our different favorite books over the years. So go to bit.ly/read_this_now. Good stuff there.
Woo!
Yeah.
It is great. And until next week, happy reading, everyone. See you later, Brad.